production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for their clients and our community. More about A2H's services and markets is at a2h.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Mayor-elect Jim Strickland, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Jim Strickland, the newly elected mayor of Memphis.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
And we also introduced Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Well, we'll talk through issues today. Maybe towards the end we get into some of the politics and the kind of race dynamics. But the first thing I think I wanted to start with, you won in a landslide, okay? And that obviously is some sort of mandate and obviously some sort of call for change. But it also means the expectations on you are very high. People, a whole lot of people have invested a lot of hope in you. Are you ready for that?
I am. I'm very excited about it. I do believe the expectations are high. And I'll try my best to meet those expectations.
One more kind of just light question, we dive into things. 4 years from now, if we're sitting here and you have won a re-election or you're running for it, what do you want Memphis to look like? How do you want Memphis to have changed in 3, 4, 5 big points in 4 years? Reasonable, doable change that you want to see happen.
Well, I'm glad you said reasonable, because some of our challenges are so big that there's not going to be big differences in a short amount of time. But I'd like us to be cleaner. I'd like us to grow. I think we need to grow in population and grow in jobs. If we're growing in population and growing in jobs, that means city government's doing a good job of reducing crime, cleaning up the blight, paving streets, making Memphis more attractive to live in. So the big goal is to grow.
Okay, crime, you talked about crime a lot, and that was a few times. That was one of your big issues. It is interesting to me, I think, that one of the big issues is really going to be essentially a morale issue. The police department has lost hundreds of members. Mike Williams, who ran against you and got a lot more votes than a lot of people, I think, expected. He'll be back in the police union as head of the police union, I assume, very soon. The morale issue, it's one thing to talk about Blue Cross versus community versus types of policing. It's another to talk about filling up the complement, but you've got a morale issue with the rank and file. How do you fix that? And you voted for they were mad at Wharton, and they are mad at you, I think, as a city councilman. You voted for cuts in their benefits. How do you fix the morale?
Well, first, that's one of the issues in our transition team that we're studying, is how to retain quality police officers and how to recruit them. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm reaching out to the 3 major unions, and I want to go meet with them, fire, police, and AFSCME. And I want to talk about this issue. I said on the campaign trail, I want to be completely transparent with our books. I think one of the problems with the morale is there's a belief that there's money there that's being used for other purposes that could have been used to retain the lifetime health insurance. I want to open the books.
Right.
And so everyone's on the same page. Now, I know everyone's not going to agree, right, but at least maybe we can mostly agree on what the underlying facts are. Figure out what we can afford and what we can't afford, because we still have enormous financial problems. We've not fully funded our pension. We have to pay for debt. And then our third financial issue, I think, is how do we retain police and fire? Because we are going to have to address that financially.
Yeah, one more question, and then we'll go to Bill. You talk about opening the books. Mike Williams on the campaign trail said forensic audit more than once. He talked a lot about a forensic. Will there be any sort of audit? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you just talking about making the numbers available?
Maybe both.
Okay.
Maybe both. A forensic audit, to be honest with you, I know that's a more extensive audit and may be extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can afford that, but we might do an audit.
Okay.
We will certainly open the books.
Bill.
And I take it that from your perspective coming into office as the mayor, that the city is possibly not done examining benefits and their impact. That you
Could there be further cuts?
Oh, I don't know. I hope not. But we still have $25 to $30 million per year to pay to our pension system. We're roughly at 50. We got to be up to 75. That 75 may actually grow because there's talk nationally that the interest rate or the investment rate that we're using at 7.5% that many governments are using across the country is too high. Meaning we're taking credit long term for a higher investment rate than actually is going to happen. And if that lowers by just 0.25% from 7.5 to 7.25, that's another $8 million per year. So instead of 75 million, it'd be 83 million.
Yeah.
That's huge for Memphis. There's talk in the state legislature of doing away with the Hall income tax. That's $15 million a
It
year.
passes through.
Passes through from the state to the city. So, you know, we have a budget $640, $650 million, $650 million. So $8 million here or $15 million there would have a huge impact when we're already tight on money. So I know I'm talking around that issue. I would hope that we don't have any more cuts because of the negative consequences of losing quality firefighters and police officers.
Well, in relation to public safety specifically, the council talked about this over the last 2 years on several occasions as one option, certainly among many, and that is some kind of different plan for public safety employees, for fire and police. And Lord knows that there were all kinds of adjustments to this to make sure that the folks who needed coverage and couldn't otherwise get it, got it. So is a public safety exception still on the table?
For all areas, in my mind, yes. For instance, we gave police and fire a higher percent raise than the other employees. I have no problem dealing with fire and police differently than other employees for many reasons. First of all, they're a core service. Public safety is the #1 responsibility of local government. Secondly, they have shorter work lives. I mean, you don't want a 64-year-old climbing a ladder up on a high rise for a fire, but you don't mind a 64-year-old office worker. So there are things about their jobs that are different than office workers, which I am myself. It's not unusual to see a 75-year-old lawyer still practicing law. It's very unusual to see a 75-year-old police officer,
Right.
firefighter.
Or
So I don't have any problem treating them differently.
Or a police patrol officer, you have some in their 40s now who have said, I can't do the things I did in my 20s on a job as a beat police officer as well.
Yeah, the issue, we have to do a better job of retaining police officers and recruiting, absolutely. The issue is if the books show that we really truly cannot afford lifetime health insurance forever, what can we do to retain and recruit police officers? And that's where I need the unions and the employees' help too. We're all in this together, and I think we all want more police officers.
Speaking of more police officers, Tony Armstrong, current police director, has announced he's in the DROP program, which is a retirement program, but that it says basically that he'd be leaving in 2017. Would you like Tony to stay, or are you maybe looking in a different direction for a new police director?
It's too early to say.
Okay.
I've talked to most of the directors individually. I'll finish that up in the next few days. And then I'll think about where we are.
Also, we talked a lot about crime and public safety. Tony Armstrong, I think right now, I know yesterday, but right now is at a conference of police directors and attorney generals and so on, law enforcement people around the country, that is a group coming together and they're beginning to lobby Congress and the president on changes to mandatory minimums, getting rid of a lot of mandatory minimums for nonviolent offenses. Basically, the prison explosion population now has a whole lot of support left and right, that we are spending so much money, we're throwing people away. But you talked really tough on crime for the last 9 months. Is your tough on crime approach out of sync with this trend of, hey, not everybody should go to jail. A lot of them should go to mental health facilities. They should go to drug treatment. They should go to diversion.
No, I think it fits hand in glove, because there's a difference between violent crime and nonviolent crime. If you noticed during the campaign trail, I always talked about violent criminals. I think we need to be tougher on violent criminals. I support this effort going on nationally and now locally. Nonviolent criminals, these mandatory minimums are really don't make sense. And the reason they fit together, my view and this view, there ought to be a significant difference between sentences for violent and nonviolent offenders, so that when people are committing crimes, they know that if they commit a violent act against somebody, there's going to be a price to pay. And therefore, it helps in deterrence. So, no, I agree with Director Armstrong on that.
You've met with all the division directors, or all but Tony.
No, almost all.
Almost all, excuse me, sorry. Will there be, massive, there'll be staff changes, okay? Right. Will they be massive in scope? Will they be small in scope? What is your sense so far?
Well, some of the directors have told me that they don't want to continue.
You want to name the names?
No, I do not.
You want to make some news today?
So there'll be some natural change. Okay. It's too early to say how massive. I think there will be substantial change.
Yeah.
Now, how you quantify that, I don't know.
And you've talked a little bit already, but for people who maybe haven't heard, you've talked about some positions not being filled. Do you see the people criticized Wharton and before him Harrington for having all these kind of high-priced offices of talent development was a big one. All these kind of strangely titled ones. It might be very good people did good work, but they seemed excessive. Do you see the size, not just the turnover, but the size of your office and your administration shrinking?
Yes. Okay. The size of City Hall administration will be smaller. How much, I can't quantify that yet.
Yeah.
Let me go back to the whole crime discussion for a second and talk about the pact among the District Attorney General, the Police Director, and the Sheriff to automatically involve the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in deadly police encounters. Is that a good policy?
Yes.
Is it a good policy without any changes to state law that currently forbid opening up the TBI records?
It is a good policy, plus I think the TBI records should be opened up. And I think they actually will. I think that law will be changed this spring. Because people want two things. They want an independent review and they want transparency. And I think in a few months we'll have both.
So right now, going to the state, TBI, you feel like there's the independent review, but not the transparency?
Correct. Okay. And I think everyone agrees on that.
Okay. But that has to go through the state to get that done?
State legislature, I believe.
Have you met with state legislators yet?
No, but I'm going, it was some. Yes. I'm going next week to meet with the governor and several members of the administration and several members of the legislature. Yeah,
because people, I think, sometimes don't know how much, the amount of control in small things that the state has. I mean, you've got to have good relations with our Shelby County delegation and the governor, to get things done, right?
Absolutely. Financially, they have a big impact on us, right. But also power-wise. City government doesn't have just unlimited powers. Our powers are delegated from the state. Yeah. For instance, income tax.
Right.
People ask me all the time, why don't we have a payroll tax? Because it's against state law. State law gives cities across the state their power.
Yeah. So even the convoluted pilot program, which we'll get to at some point, is defined by state law. Absolutely. And it's why we have different But you talk about the legislature for a second. I'm up there. We have a paper in Nashville and so on. And one thing that is very clear in that legislature is they don't like Memphis. Have you ever experienced that? And I'm not saying
people disliking me.
Disliking Memphis. They really don't. They think that it's this place of a great deal of crime and despair, and there's real negative feelings in that legislature. You got a legislature that's dominated by a kind of Tea Party, rural group of people. I don't think they particularly like Nashville either, but they really don't like Memphis.
Well. Yes, I do feel that somewhat, but I interned in Nashville in 1984 for two state representatives, Dan Bird and Alvin King. I know Bill remembers them. Mm-hmm. And I was a college sophomore. and I remember back then Memphians saying, well, we don't get our fair shake out of Nashville. So there's been sort of that thought for a long time. But I do know that feeling's out there. But I've talked to many Shelby County legislators, Democrat and Republican, who are unified in changing that belief. The suburban Republican legislators from Shelby County, in my belief, really want the best for Memphis. They feel like we're all in it together, and I'm committed to working with them to try to improve our image in Nashville and frankly get more out of Nashville.
Yeah.
We had actually had a slate of candidates for the Memphis City Council, none of whom won, who were backers of the de-annexation legislation. What do you think the chances are that we'll see some action on that?
I hear all this secondhand, but I believe some kind of law will pass that gives limited areas in Shelby County the right to vote to de-annex, probably the most recently annexed areas. And that a law obviously would apply across the state. And I think that will pass. And so I think parts of Shelby County will get the chance to vote.
How many people are we talking about? How much land do we think we're talking about?
I don't know. If it's the two most recently annexed areas, I think it's like 6,000 or 7,000 people.
Okay.
I mean, but overall annexation, Memphis is size-wise is too big, and it's gotten too big. Meaning, we have to serve a land area, fire department. We have to build fire stations out in areas that aren't very populated because
they're so far away.
They're so far away, and Memphis needs to shrink. Now, do I have the answer on how that happens? No. So,
are you calling for more de-annexation?
No.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm not calling for any action right now.
Yeah.
But I think we need to think about that.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't annex any further because of the moratorium and the requirement of a referendum for that.
Right. Ideally, I'd like to make Memphis so great over the next few years that people want to be part of Memphis, but we're a long way from that being true.
Bill mentioned the city council. You are still a city council member through the end of the year. When you take office, I mean, one real political people who watched Wharton. And I don't mean to beat on Wharton, I just mean I don't know if it's learning from mistakes or how you might change. He had not a great relationship with the city council. I mean, how will you try to have a better relationship with city council? You'll have worked with, 6 or 7 of them.
Right, and I know many of the others.
And many of the others. What will you do differently?
Meet with them more often. But I'll tell you, since I've been elected, I can kind of understand the time crunch that the mayor probably is under and the time limitations he has to do that. So I will make extra special effort to meet with the council members more often and try to work on specific things with those council members. I think I'll have a great relationship with the council as a whole.
Bill.
So at the most recent council session, the one earlier in this week, the council delayed 9 items, put them off. Some of that was because of the election, and to leave those decisions up to the mayor and the new council that's going to take office. There were 2 resolutions totaling $12.5 million that was an appropriation for the move of general service maintenance efforts out of Overton Park and to the new facility where Walter Simmons Public Housing Development was. Is that something that you think should go forward, or are you reconsidering that?
I don't know the full answer to that question. It all revolves around, or some of it revolves around the Eggleston project that would be at the corner of Poplar and Parkway, that corner of Overton Park. Mm-hmm. In general, I think that improvement that would be made there with the Eggleston Museum turning that area into a greensward basically would be an improvement for Overton Park. Now, I know that has some effect on the zoo's storage and so forth. So that part I don't have a real position on yet. I do think Eggleston would be an improvement for the park. And I didn't always think that. But they're spending their own money to make that a greensward, which in the master plan that's like 25 years old, that was supposed to be a greensward in there, I think would be a big benefit for Overton Park.
Speaking of Overton Park, there is a social media effort by CPOP, Citizens to Preserve Overton Park, letter writing campaign to Mayor Wharton saying, before you leave office, write a letter that bans greensward overflow parking at the park. Should Mayor Wharton do that before he leaves?
I've never heard about this issue. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to give him advice on that. But what I've said, and I'm going to stick with it, I want the parties to work it out themselves. If they do not, by July 1st of next year, I will make the decision. This issue is not going to drag on forever. They've had meetings. I talked to the Parks Director just this week about it. She's got more meetings scheduled before the end of the year. You know, if they can resolve it before the end of this year, that'd be great for me.
Okay. In general, not just items before the City Council, but do you have some kind of inventory of projects and initiatives that the administration has undertaken that are in effect too far advanced to pull back on, even if you wanted to? And I'm not saying you want to, but is that part of the process? Is that kind of inventory?
Yes and no. Yes, we've gotten a list of the grant applications and when they're due, and some of them are due in January and February. So we want to make sure we get those. For instance, I talked to somebody in the administration yesterday about the Ambassadors Program and the Summer Youth Program. I say yes, let's continue that. The Ambassador Program in the spring, the Summer Youth Program. Yes, please start recruiting businesses now because we don't want to wait till the new administration because it takes time. So yeah, we are working very well with the administration. Mayor Wharton has been extraordinarily gracious, and Jack Sammons, we've met, and I think it's going to be a seamless transition.
And I take it the $30 million federal grant for Foot Homes and for the South City, that goes ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely, and even a smaller grant like the analyzing how the fire department answers non-emergency medical issues. As you know, the fire department and the ambulance service is really swamped with medical calls that truly are not 911 calls, and how to deal with those. There's a group coming in to study that. The Mayor Wharton and I both talked to that group on the phone last week and said, the new administration's on board and we're going to move forward with that.
You mentioned Wharton. We got about 4 minutes left here. What was that like to see him? I mean, you beat him by 20 points.
Mayor Wharton is a very gracious man, and he served this community very well. So I didn't expect any tension, and there wasn't any.
Yeah.
He wants the best for Memphis. Yeah. And that's why I think he is committed to making this transition very smooth.
There are, lots of big name groups and businesses, the Chamber, I think Memphis Tomorrow, I think, Steve Cohen, supported Wharton. Does that mean you will never work with the Chamber again and you will blackball all their priorities? Is that the kind of politics you're going to play?
I blocked their number from my phone. No. Actually, let's talk politically. Politically, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, frankly. Because people were ready for a change, and the establishment, that argument that we made really helped. But practically, no, I've already met with the Chamber. I've met with Memphis Tomorrow. We're going to have a good working relationship.
The campaign, I thought one thing that was interesting, just an observation, was that race was not a big issue. Now, it is an issue for certain voters. There's certain people only going to vote for a black candidate and they're only going to vote for a white. You never really brought up race. None of the other 3 African-American candidates brought up race. Did it ever occur to you to bring up race? You're not going to say yes to that. But there was an interesting dynamic. this city has had some very racially fraught elections, and it was a non-factor.
Absolutely. And what was great about this election, I thought, all 4 of the major candidates had significant white support and black support. If you looked at their campaign structure, they were very diverse.
Right.
And it never came up. as far as I can tell. And being the white candidate going in the black community, I never felt it was an obstacle at all.
You don't have the history of, I mean, Steve Cohen, for instance, has these incredible hooks with the clergy and with the black community and has built those over a long career. You're not known for having those same kind of hooks. Is it a goal or is it a need to build better connections with the African American community?
Well, first, we did really well. We got 20
or 25%,
20
right?
to 25% of the black vote, and frankly, almost came in second to Mayor Warren. We were very close to the number of black votes he had. But yes, I need to do better. I'm going to reach out to the entire community. I didn't get all the white vote. I didn't get all the black vote. But I'm going to be the mayor for all those communities. So yeah, we'll be out in the community
About a minute left here, Bill.
In terms of the backstory of the campaign, I had heard, and I saw in your campaign finance report, that you had about $10,000 for a poll in mid-September. I've heard that was, are these numbers too good to be true that we're seeing? Is that how that unfolded?
Well, actually, yeah, you've got good intel. Yeah, we ran 2 polls fairly within 10 days because the polls were moving so good for us that some people on our team said, this is almost too good to be true, so let's run another poll. And that poll was even better. I mean, we just kept steadily moving up to the point where we really thought we were going to win fairly significantly. And that's what happens.
And then after that, you made about a $90,000 TV ad buy.
Right.
Yeah, but we were planning on doing that anyway.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for being here. We're out of time. We hope to have you back many times over the next few years. Congratulations again. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
A2H. Engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for their clients and our community. More about A2H's services and markets is at a2h.com.